Hey everybody, my name's Mike Montgomery, and today we're gonna do a custom laundry room backsplash from floor to floating shelf on modern builds. I started by removing the floating shelf above the washer and dryer. This is gonna be our vertical stop to our backsplash, and we're gonna be putting it back on later. After removing the old peel and stick backsplash, I marked a line where the bottom of that shelf is, and then I removed the screws that were holding this into the 2x4 studs behind the drywall. Next, I found the middle of the room and I double checked it by measuring off of each wall, and I marked a vertical line straight down. We're gonna be tiling from the center out. And these are the tiles that I'm using, and I absolutely love them. The Chevron pattern is super cool, but anything we go over or learn in this video should apply to basically any mosaic. I laid my tiles out on the ground with the same 1/8 inch spacing that they'll have on the wall, and then I measured to see where I would need to put my ledge in reference to that top line we made so that I could have as many full tiles as possible. You could also start your backsplash from the floor, but my laundry units are gonna cover most of that, so I want the full pieces at the top. A diamond disc on an angle grinder is great for cutting around outlets and other ports coming out of the wall. If you're dry cutting though, make sure and use a segmented disc. It helps remove all of that dust a lot easier. I'm using the most standard thin set mortar. This is called multi-set that you can pick up from Home Depot, and I'm using a contrasting color from the tile and grout that I'll eventually be using. In general, I'm pretty messy, so this is gonna help me make sure my tiles are clean before I put on grout later. Just be sure to mix your grout according to the directions and then let it set for about 5 minutes. Your mortar bag should also recommend which trowel you're using for what size tile. I used a 3/16 inch V-notch trowel and I laid it on pretty thick. I wanted to make sure that I had really good coverage. I also used a grout float to make sure I was using even pressure between all of those individual tiles. And I'm gonna be sure to leave a link down in the description so that you can see all of the materials and tools that I used, including these traditional 1/8 inch spacers, which worked really well. Most backsplashes reference a countertop for level. That's why we put in this ledge, because you do not want gravity working against you. That's also why you don't start from the top and work your way down. While I was at the store, I also picked up a diamond hole saw that you can use to wet cut. After you adhere the guide where you want to cut, you can throw in some water and then drill a hole through tile, and it works really well. It cuts cleanly. I did also have to cut this relief so that I could get everything around the gas pipe, but I saved this offcut and I installed it so that everything could blend as much as possible. My tiles call for a 3/16 inch V-notch trowel, and whenever I'm spreading it, I'm holding it at a 45-degree angle and just keeping consistent pressure. The reason I'm applying a relatively thick coat of this thin set is because I am not applying any to the back of the tile. You can see me doing it here, but for most mosaics, it is not necessary and causes a lot of squeeze out and mess. So my recommendation is just to press and wiggle those tiles into place so that you get good adhesion, and a grout float, like I said earlier, is great to make sure that pressure is consistent. All right, that is one half complete. I'm saving all of my perimeter and edge cuts until I do the other half, but first I'm gonna clean up this excess mortar from the face of the tiles. I also picked up this from the Home Depot. We're gonna see how well it does at cleaning the thin set from the grout lines. Oh, wow. This tool saves a lot of cleanup later on, and now we can go ahead and start tiling the other half of the wall. But before we get tiling, I want to give a big thanks to the sponsor of today's episode, Ariat Workwear. Today's ad read could not be easier. If you watch my content, then you know how much I wear Ariat gear. These boots are my favorite. They are the 8-inch Cascade work boots. Ariat was nice enough to send me a new pair of these Cascade boots, but I think I'm gonna be making a mess. So today I'm wearing the same pair that I've worn almost every day for over a year. The M8 modern cut denim is really high quality and it's slim through the leg. Plus, they've got these reinforced belt loops at an angle on the hip so that when you bend down, it just holds everything better. And finally, we've got the rebar cotton strong work tee with the ducktail hem. You can thank Ariat for the lack of plumber's crack throughout this video. Now you can follow the link in the description to Ariat's website where I've made a list of all of my favorites, including the Dura Canvas work jacket. It's also a part of the rebar work line from Ariat. This is the best work coat in the game, and what's awesome is you can get 10% off your first purchase if you follow the link down in my description and sign up for Ariat's email list. Now let's get tiling. Here on the other half of the wall, it's convenient that I'm running into the dryer vent on the first piece. I can go ahead and get it prepped, measured, and cut. To do that, I'm gonna use a tape measure and see how far off of the edge of the tile I am. So here I am 4.5 inches to 8.5 inches, and off of the ledge I am 3 inches to 7 inches. Using those measurements, I was able to draw a square that I was able to then make a circle inside of and cut using the same angle grinder disc as earlier. Now I cut halfway through this tile and then I flipped it over and cut through the rest. That way I could get a really clean cut. If I'm being honest, I was really impressed. This technique gave me a really clean result, and from there I could start tiling the second half of this wall. And for that, I'm gonna go ahead and let the music play. And now that all of my full pieces are going in, I could start filling in all of the small pieces on the top row. And like I said earlier, I am not renting a tile saw, I'm using a tile cutter. And this is the tile cutter that I used on the large format tiles for the floors in the laundry room. It worked great for that task, and I'm gonna be using it again on this mosaic tile. Of course, the most convenient thing you can do is rent or buy a wet saw with a sliding table, but I'm curious how manual tools work when it comes to cut quality and efficiency. To start, I got some 3/4 inch plywood and slapped together a quick jig. That way I could have all of the offcuts or the rest of the mosaic supported that wasn't being cut. I also used this as a chance to extend the fence out a little bit. Wow, okay. Using a tile cutter like this or a cheap $40 one really is the same. You just score your tile with the cutting wheel, and then once you've made all of your lines, you use the breaker on the part where there's the most material available. You need to make sure and get that scoring wheel out of the way so that you can break all of these mosaic tiles individually and then be able to cut them away from the mesh later on. Having all of this offcut support was really nice because the mesh is really floopy, and I imagine things would be a little bit squirrely if I was trying to hold it all in place. Wow, and look at that. Almost every one of them is a perfect cut. Needless to say, I was really impressed here. I thought I was gonna have to waste a few pieces to get good ones. Also, this was way cleaner than a wet saw. Now I did, on the other hand, back butter each of these individual small tiles. That way I didn't make too much of a mess. I didn't worry about getting new thin set on the wall. I just put it on the tile and then squeezed it in place. And pro tip, start with 2 pieces of masking paper. That way you can clean up halfway through. My laundry room is an add-on, so there's a tiny bit of a slope to my floor. That's why you see me measuring, marking, and cutting each of my bottom pieces individually. That way they match as good as possible. Scoring and breaking these tiles got less and less of a thing where I was nervous each time, and I really got clean cuts the majority of the time. This is one of the worst ones you see here, and it's still super usable. I didn't worry about those tiny pieces. I was able to cut those with the angle grinder disc easily. The cuts that I needed to make for the side pieces were too close to the edge of each of these pieces to use the scorer and breaker. Instead, I used the angle grinder handheld, and I got great results. I really believe you could do an entire backsplash just with the angle grinder and still have it look really nice. Woo! Done! You'll want to make sure and let this set overnight unless you're using rapid set mortar. Then you can remove your spacers and clean everything up with a wet sponge. This tool is called a grout saw, and you can use it to clean up any mortar that squeezed into the cracks. That way the grout can fill it. And grouting does not need to be an intimidating process, but it's important to mask off your walls and the floor. I've got 1/8 inch grout lines, so I'm using standard sanded grout in a gray color that's really similar to my tiles. This stuff is called DeLorean Gray, and it matched in a really cool way. Having a backsplash like this is a little crazy because normally you want to work at a 45 and perpendicular degree angle to your grout lines, but mine are going everywhere. So we're just gonna load up and spread it out. So what we're gonna do is start at the bottom, hold it at a 45, and squeegee our way up. Mixing grout is a lot like mixing mortar. You're gonna wanna let it set for a few minutes before you apply it. That way it can set a little bit and stay in the cracks better. I laid it on thick, starting from the bottom, and I just made sure to get good coverage before I worked in any other directions. After that, I started working methodically, working in 45-degree angles, vertically, horizontally, pretty much every angle as possible to squeegee these as clean as I could get them. The reason I have 2 buckets is so I can have one for clean water and one for dirty water that I rinse in. You wanna make sure that your sponge is wet, but wring it out so that it's not really dripping water. About like that. And I'm gonna work in circular motions. With each pass, you'll continue to get the face of these tiles cleaner each time. Be sure to always rinse in that dirty bucket and then load up with clean water before cleaning everything again. I did 3 or 4 passes cleaning the face of these tiles, and by the last time, it dried and the haze really went away off of the face of these tiles, and that's what you're looking for. Then I repeated those same steps on the other side, and I should say, it really helps to get as much of this thin set off before you start sponging. It really helps the cleanup process go by way quicker. And if you've done everything right, you can remove the last little bit of haze with a paper towel or just a splash of haze remover. And with that, this project is complete. Sweet. I think this is my 4th, maybe my 5th time tiling, and every time I do it, I learn something new, and I couldn't be more happy with how this project came out. I'm really happy with the tile cutter that I used, and the fact that I was able to do everything with no tile saw. The Home Depot delivery with a washer and dryer are coming soon, and I cannot wait to get these installed. I'll be sure to leave a link to the ones that I've got in the description of this video. I think they complement everything really nicely. Man, I cannot get over how good this backsplash looks. So thanks again for watching. Make sure to click that like, comment, and subscribe with the notification bell down below, and we will see you next time on Modern Build.